I'm Bethany.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing at the individual and the collective level.
Join us as we invite guests to share their personal paths to freedom.
Lauren is my best friend. And my
animal. Wait, I thought I was your best friend.
You're both my best friends. But Lauren...
Everybody is actually Bethany's best friend.
I do have a lot of best friends. But Lauren's we coach each other, and we have a lot of similarities in the arcs of our lives. A lot of the stuff that we work on, we work on similar things, sometimes in different ways. And we have this podcast together. She did the CLG coaches training program with me. That's where we met. And
Lauren, where are you? What part of the world?
Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, I got this tattoo in Chicago.
Wow,
it's a fly fishing rod.
Oh, that's cool.
In Wicker Park. Are you in Chicago proper?
Yes, Bronzeville.
Oh, I love Chicago so much. It's a great city.
Chicago proper is the size of a continent. It's
I know, but Yeah. Have you been to do you ever go to this little coffee place, the Wormhole?
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
I love the Wormhole so much.
I don't actually know if since the pandemic, if it's around, but
it's around. I follow them on Insta.
Oh, okay.
Have you been to The Girl and the Goat?
Yes.
So good.
okay.
It's been a long time since I've done anything like that, though, I will say.
I'm just sending a quick
another version of my Chicago life when I did those things.
Or will we go to 7?
We go till it goes. So
Okay.
when it reaches its natural landing, we stop.
I think we got it. I feel like we're there. I feel like that's
So tell me about Jim. Introduce me.
No, he won't let me. Keeps talking about coffee shops. So Jim has known me since I was 8 years old. And he has had many different roles in my life. He's been my youth pastor, my pastor. He married me and all my siblings.
Oh, really?
He's a musician. He ran a summer camp I went to when I was a kid. That was a hugely formative experience that I went with all my siblings and my cousins.
I've been present for almost every major life event for the Glazer family for the last 30 years.
Yeah. And are you in Boston too?
Yeah, I'm in a little town called Marblehead, about 40 minutes north of Boston. It's a little peninsula town.
Lauren's been to my house, so it's 2 towns over. It's Beverly's here, then Salem, then Marblehead's on the other side of Salem. It's beautiful. I didn't take you there, but I'll take you there next time.
And are you still a pastor?
I'm still ordained, and I serve. The pastoral work that I do is serving people who are disenfranchised by evangelicalism and the church, but still would like to have somebody who can fill that kind of role in their life. So
what does that look like then?
It looks like people like Beth calling me up every once in a while and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting married. What do you say? Are you in or are you out?" Or people that are dying and they want a pastor, or people who want to have conversations where they get to explore who God is and what that might mean. So let's say you're raised in the church and you have a particular version of God that has sort of been forced upon you. It's kind of like for me when I was little, I was raised to believe that I don't like beets because my mom didn't like beets. And so we were never served beets. And it's you won't like beets. And then you taste them as an adult and they're delicious. Or you hate Brussels sprouts and your mom makes you eat Brussels sprouts. And you're I don't want to eat these Brussels sprouts. These are gross, right? And then you get older and you like go into a restaurant that makes them really beautifully. And then all of a sudden you're like, Brussels sprouts are amazing. I just never had this version of them. And so for a lot of people, they're fed a version of Jesus that wants to burn everybody in hell. And that doesn't sit quite right with them. And then they reach their late 20s, 30s, and they go, I'd like to taste this Jesus thing again, but as an adult. And then you taste the part that is like love and inclusion and kindness and generosity and forgiveness. And you're like, oh, wait, now that's a Jesus I can get behind. And so the place where I've landed is, I think that I was playing a concert at a Unitarian church on Long Island a few years ago. And they were all wearing these little pins that said, is it true? Is it kind? Is it helpful? And I've decided to hold that as my primary theology around the Christ. If this religious belief does not make me kinder, truer, or more helpful, then it goes.
I'd love to talk about Jesus today.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking a lot about Jesus, actually, because I feel like I'm being crucified.
Mm.
I feel
You guys
like
are both
I'm going through a crucifixion. I don't think this is about me being a 4. I don't think it has anything to do with that.
Okay.
I think this is like a season of my life that is some kind of preparation for something else. It's just too many. It's like unbelievable. And it's very specifically, it feels almost like curated for like what crucifixion would look like for me.
What's it like for you to be crucified with the hope of resurrection? Because that sounds like that's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. It's like the only thing I can hold on to.
Yeah.
It's like it's the only way I can truly move through it is to believe that there is some kind of purpose to it.
So you suspect that the crucifixion is going to serve you?
Yes, but more than serve me, like, I guess, serve what I'm here to do or be in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
And I've been playing a lot with like, what does eternal life really represent? What was Jesus pointing to? What does it mean to like, I feel like in this relationship I've been a part of for the last 7 years that it very much feels like Jesus being on the cross, being pinned to the cross and still forgiving, and just keep giving and keep loving in some kind of hope that there's some bigger reason to love that way. That there's a justice beyond us, like when Jesus like turns to whoever is on his left and the other cross or whatever. And it's like, your sins are forgiven. Like, another hope that I'm having is like, I don't have to source my own justice. I don't have to source my own revenge. Like it is good enough to just love unconditionally. And that is of service in some way that's then also going to balance out in the long run. And what is the eternal life that Jesus was pointing to if we choose to love that way, if we choose to die to ourself and die to what I would say our ego mind? What is that eternal life that he's truly pointing to?
What do you want it to be in your wildest dreams?
It feels like a level of liberation from suffering, because I've suffered in all the ways that suffering would look for me.
Yeah.
So it looks like being able to, it feels like where I'm moving is like, I'm like, what else could possibly break me?
Yeah.
So then how might I show up in a world with people if I'm not afraid of being broken, or if I feel like I've been crucified to the point that there isn't anything else to take,
Yeah. There are these two things that are happening simultaneously with Jesus as it relates to his crucifixion. One, he knows that it's going to happen. Like, it's not a surprise to him. And we still have this thing that happens in the garden where Jesus prays. What an interesting concept. And his prayer in that moment is, he says, Father, if you could have this cup pass me by, meaning if there's any other way that we can do this, right? If we can do this without the cross, if there's any other way we can do this, can we find that way? But if not my will, but yours be done. And it's like this voluntary, intentional lowering of himself. And one of my mentors, actually, Beth knows him, David Van Huysen, used to say that the path of the world was like an upside down N. And the way that we live is that we are, we're kind of born, and our culture is one of self exaltation, right? We make ourselves big, look out for number one, get what you can. It's about me. It's about me. And that path ultimately leads downward, but that the path of Christ is one of, he's God and he lowers himself, takes on a human body, is born in a dirty barn to a marginalized woman, preaches love and healing, and he is crucified on a cross, and he overcomes that grave, and he is exalted to the name that is above every other name. And so a friend of mine, this guy, Rob Bell, wrote a book called Love.
I was about to say, you have a lot of Rob Bell vibes. I've read a lot of his books. What books?
Oh, okay. Yeah. He's a friend. He's not like a best friend, but he's like a solid, friendly acquaintance. And we've hung out and done stuff together. But he talks about the concept, like it's a theological concept that you can actually live out if you think about death, burial, and resurrection. So for Lauren, the questions that you get to ask during the season of your life, and it sounds like you're doing it just beautifully, and with that same little bit of a tinge of, if we could have this cup pass me by, but okay, kind of looks like we're doing this. But when Lauren gets to embody what it means to live death, burial, and resurrection, there's so much suffering and so much hope in that. What do you need to hear around that?
I just feel like my cells are it's like my whole field is integrating what you're saying and expressing to me. So I need to pause for that for a second. Yeah, when I ask like what I need to hear, it's not like what I need to hear. It's like more what I need to know. It's like that I am loved by God or what sort. So like that, because there's this like, why would you keep doing this? Why so much? And it's not like it's like, I actually did have a reading by this woman about my life's purpose and walk. And she was like, you're going to go through the hardest trials. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because of who you're called to be. And I think, and then I was listening to some feedback I got and from Jim and Diana actually at our coaches. And they were like, I appreciate how you go wherever love takes you. Yeah. And I feel like I have been really like a good student of love, like that I have honored whatever love has asked of me, whatever has been asked of me to leave behind, to release, to die to. I have agreed, I've surrendered. And I think this last bout, it's like I went through that over like a long spectrum of time. And then it was like another big like hit over a year, like everything really close together. And I think there's just a part of me that's like, am I loved?
Yeah. Yeah. What if the divine mystery brought you a complete stranger on a Friday afternoon to talk about the power of death, burial, and resurrection, to give you a sense that you might be on the right track, doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons?
Yeah, I feel like when you were talking about like Jesus knew what was going to happen, it was still like I get a lot of information about what's happening to me. I get a lot of, clear support and the like emotional, physical, human experience. There's like this, it's like it doesn't change. It doesn't change what that is to actually have the experience.
Yeah, you said that you wanted to talk about Jesus a little bit. So this is sort of like a seminary level theological thought around Jesus that says, we believe that Jesus has two natures. We believe that he is fully divine and fully human, and that those two persons, those two natures, are never mixed and they're never separated. They sort of coexist mysteriously together, his humanity and his divinity. And likewise, you have a part of you that is has existed before the foundations of the earth, that is held like a daughter of God, that is infused with the Spirit, and is so magnificently, perpetually whole and healed and loved. And you have the nature of the fact that you can stub your toe and it hurts like hell, right? And so it's like these two things. But what you seem to be doing so beautifully is allowing yourself to surrender. You're saying like allow love to lead you or guide you where it wants to take you. And it's like the divine mystery has you by the hand. I'd like to read you a poem, if I can, that I think might be helpful. It's short. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the words of Rilke, I believe is a German philosopher, poet.
Yeah.
Not a Christian, as far as I know. But he says this. He says, God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. And these are the words we dimly hear. You, Lauren, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing. Embody me. Flare up like a flame and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life, and you will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. And I feel like if I have a word for you today, it's that idea of letting everything happen to you and realizing that no feeling is final. There's just seems to be some real goodness. And thank you for being so open with me. What a beautiful open heart. Just magnificent. I love you.
I love you.
I love you. And it's not just because Beth loves you, but like I love you. And Beth knows me well enough to know that when I say I love you, I mean I love you. Are you loved? You're at least loved by two people. And God is love. So you have no choice but to be loved by God.
Yeah, I just want to really appreciate your essence, and it's really it's like there's just an energy to your essence that's really like everything in me relaxes, and I trust you. And I can't find energetically any bullshit in your energy.
Oh, it's there. We haven't been on this call very long.
But I think when
That's
you're
Jim.
in that specific place of what you just were, whatever you dropped into,
thanks.
It feels like you're a microphone for something else, something much bigger.
Thanks
than
for
you.
saying that. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, and I really, really felt held, and I felt seen, and I felt like your questions were really, they were like holding questions while also challenging questions at the same time. And, when I think about guides or pastors, or like, I'm really becoming aware, like what feels true to me is that there is a design to this walk. We're kind of out of alignment with the design, but part of that design is like that there are elders and pastors and guides and people who go before you and who walk with you on your journey, and that place is a very special place, and it's also a place of a lot of responsibility, right? And the more in integrity that you are with that, any of us choose to be with that responsibility, like the more we can serve. Mm-hmm. And I experience you energetically as like what it would mean and feel like to be energetically pastoral and in integrity with the truth of being pastoral.
I won't deflect, and I will just receive that with a grateful heart, and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel beautifully seen by you, and instantly dropped into just like the show I Dream of Jeannie. It's probably before your time, but Jeannie just had this. She lived in this bottle, and this bottle was just like her in like giant, like a big red pillow. It was like her domain. Mm-hmm. And it's like the three of us have just been like dropped in this like beautiful, lush container where we can be fully here and see and just feel it and love it, and like instantly, like there's no time required to get warm. It's just like, oh yeah, this is who we're with, our people. Right. Yeah.
I had a dad, and I had Jim, and they're real different, but what Lauren just articulated, I think I've experienced that with you, Jim, since I was 8 years old. And like once we grew up, I'd realize you're not that much older than me, and then there got to be all these other elements and different ways that we get to know each other, like as friends and other kind of things.
Too. Peers now, right? Yeah.
What is it?
Peers, yes.
I was like, what did you say? Yes, as peers, which is exciting, but like what she talks about, like a dropping in and communicating something that's not just words, it's like an experience.
Well, I noticed that when you're talking, I kind of want to go into, I guess, I want to say, like, I have a religion that I don't fully believe in.
Yeah.
And what I mean is, like, are you aware of like what it is to be like Gnostic and like the Gnostic tradition?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have when we get into those weeds, you'll get an opinionated version of me. When I think about Gnostics, I think about the Docetists, who were like the pre-Gnostics. Have you spent any time reading scripture at all?
Yes, in my life. Yeah, I grew up Christian and Baptist and was Christian until I was, and well, like studied until I was maybe 27.
Yeah. And how young are you now, if I may?
I'm 39.
Okay.
She was born 2 days before me, Jim.
Cool.
And I'm not saying they're my religion, but I'm saying what I appreciate about that, the tradition of learning through experience, right? Mm-hmm. And testing what you believe you might be true, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And so I guess when I say that, I mean, like, I have this sense of like what I think could be true, and I step out on it and I don't know, what I'm going to find. But one thing, when you're talking about Jesus and the end, like one thing that I believe is that there's an opportunity for more people to actualize what it is to be human and what it is. I wouldn't call it God. I would say like their light body, the part of them that is beyond and before. And that there's a vibrational frequency that can hold, and a way of being that has the opportunity to really heal humanity and heal the planet. Mm-hmm. And that's actually like when I feel into like, why is my walk this way, from a more intellectual place and not an emotional place? It's like, who do I need to be and what do I need to go through to be able to be a person that can help hold like who humanity needs to be to shift the direction of humanity and the earth. And I think it requires, like when you're talking about the end, the first way, right? Like all the elevation that happens. It's like there's been so much elevation over consistent amount of time. And then the impact, right, is there's so many ways I feel like it's disconnected us from each other, from from the earth, from even the consequences of harm, because we're not connected to our bodies. So we're like hurting each other and hurting the earth without feeling it and wanting. Yeah. And so there's this other piece for me about, well, maybe it is for me to walk that path first, to become someone who can guide or pastor or hold the hand of others who are to walk that same path. And then the question I'm asking is, who would I be? How would I show up in life? How would I show up in community? What will I create from that place of resurrection?
Do you have some kind of sense that you're not already doing that?
No, I believe I have been doing it, but this feels like this past year, I pretty much stopped all coaching and guiding in all the ways that I was supporting people for multiple reasons. One, just feeling like I wasn't available, but two, just that I was being called into a higher level of like integrity around that I wasn't ready to fully hold yet. And I guess it's making me have, like, if you think about pastors, like, and of course I'm stereotyping, and I'll put them up if they keep barking, but like how much drama there is in that role, like how many scandals we can point to, right? Like there's something to what we've created around these roles, similar to pastor or leader, that has created this out of integrity experience, and which we can also assume maybe it's just very hard for the human to hold that level of responsibility. And what's really required of us, what could, if we really want to step into the fullness and the integrity of what that holds and represents, what's required of us to do first?
Is that a question?
Even though you're saying
rhetorical, I guess.
Even though your story seems to be that you like stopped guiding people and stopped coaching people and stuff, I don't think that's most people's experience of you this last year. I mean, you guide and coach me. You're kind of just, mean, you're kind of always guiding and coaching, like everyone in your community and the people you touch, even on this podcast, I think.
Well, I mean, there's the other piece. Yeah. I mean, to Bethany's point, we think about, or I should say, I think about the divine mystery and its impact on us as everything is already and not yet. So because time is a construct that was made for us to measure things, God isn't bound by it. So you are, and I am simultaneously being sanctified and I'm sanctified. You are simultaneously being resurrected and are resurrected. And so you can probably find elements of death, burial, and resurrection at any point in time. And it just happens that the EQ on crucifixion, on death, that volume knob is turned up high for you right now.
But also, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I actually say similar points all the time about the time construct. But also, there, and again, I'm processing something that I'm not on the other side of, right? So this is just
right.
The sense of what I believe is true. I really believe that there is a way that we are not fully holding the sacred nature and the sanctity of the roles we choose and of what it is to be human with each other. And as a result, it's not like it's consequences that we can't survive. It's like we're surviving them and we're finding ways around them and we're adjusting. But what calls to me is like, is what it would be like to create my own experience of what it is to hold other people and myself as sacred and like what and the level of integrity that people would have to be in, like even like let's say around their sexual behavior or around their sexual energy, all of these ways that we confuse each other and cross boundaries and make things.
Yeah.
There's just something calling me around that. So it's not to demean myself. It's just that there's just a level of integrity that I think is possible and is necessary for some people to step into.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't miss an ounce of it.
What'd you say?
I said, don't miss an ounce of it. Don't feel it doesn't seem like you do, but don't rush through anything. I guess to Bethany's point, when she said, you say you've taken a break from coaching and guiding, but you still coach and guide her, and allow those little glimmers of bright purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to remember that.
Yeah. I'm so excited to be getting to meet you right now. I'm so excited to be I'm just so. Can we swear on this podcast? I'm just so fucking honored to be in your presence and to get to witness such openness and power. And I am so excited to see where your road goes.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll walk it. I'll walk it to the extent that I'm able. And this is where Beth knows that I have a tendency to overextend and overpromise, and that's my work. It's part of my administrative work. But my heart is in your journey with you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I believe you.
Yeah.
I can always feel Jim. I don't get to see him all the time, but sometimes when I really need to see him, he really shows up.
What was your journey to who you are today?
Just that when you ask that question, do you have like anything coming up for you in terms of anything that details that you would love to know that maybe you, and this isn't to put you on the spot, but I sort of have like the version of that story that I tell professionally. But if you have a curiosity, or Beth, for you as well, if you have a curiosity around anything specific, then I'm happy to. Does anything come up for you?
I have an assumption of when you ask that question, like most people don't, my assumption is people don't get to the level of kind of like openness and awareness that you have about Jesus and willingness to be of service. One, they don't get there by accident. And they don't usually get there easily. There's usually something that happens. And I guess I just wonder,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sort of like the ABCs of my story, redemption, the idea, who is that beautiful puppy dog?
This is
Thor.
Who is it?
Thor. Let me see if I can get his face
Thor.
real quick. Come here, look.
Oh, hi, Thor. What kind of puppy dog is Thor?
He's a golden doodle, but he has really straight hair.
He's beautiful.
Thank you.
Rebelling against stereotypes.
So sort of like the 50 Cent bio is that I was, my childhood was very, very polarized. My father, parts of my childhood were Norman Rockwell and really beautiful. And I also had a dad that was explosively violent and probably pretty narcissistic. So my childhood was really, really violent. And I had a lot of very serious, like very violent bullying. So I got hit in the face a lot as a child. And I learned at a very young age that I could protect myself by being funny and articulate and entertaining. And so as a result, I developed a very, very hyper performer part. And but that performer part was like just a force field, really, to keep me from getting hit and made fun of. And I turned to food to sort of deal and cope and mask and numb and distract. So I wound up spending most of my life morbidly obese. I was 430 pounds at my all-time heaviest. I became aware of Christ. I would say that I entered into a conscious relationship with Jesus when I was 8. And the Spirit of God is the ribbon that has flowed through every part of my life. And so at 50 years old, I look at who I've become and who I am, and I can honestly say I don't regret any of the abuse that I endured. I don't regret any of the bullying that I endured. I don't regret the fact that I had to buy 2 airplane seats to fly on an airplane. I don't regret any of that. And I have just seen throughout my entire life the hand of God carrying me. And most people, when they look at me now, they would never imagine that, for a big chunk of my life, this was, that was me. And I can say now, where I used to hate that guy and I was so ashamed of him. I love him so much now, and I'm so grateful for him. And I won't keep going on, but I think that having lived that life made me compassionate.
Yeah.
And it made me safe in terms of being able to hold people's heartache. I think that's the whole point of all of it. And now, I coach differently, a different methodology, but the more Bethany and I have talked about that methodology, there just seems to be a lot of similarities. And it's like, it's almost like speaking the same language, but a different dialect.
Yeah.
Is how I would describe it.
His coactive, Jim's type of coaching has contextual elements, I would say. The thing he's trained in, there's some overlap. Same as Nico. You and Nico do the same one, right?
Yeah.
We had Nico on recently.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't watched it yet, but I need to.
It's sweet.
Yeah. So those are sort of the broad strokes. But I'm 50 years old. I don't have children. I don't have a wife. I don't have much to speak of materially. I'm not unhappy. I'm super curious about how my life has gone in those respects, and like really excited to see what's down the road. Super weird, It's just super weird. Like I feel like I have so much, like I would have had so much to offer a little boy or a little girl, and so I wonder about all that stuff, but I'm not unhappy with my lot. I've had a weird and fun and fascinating. I'm having a weird, fun and fascinating life. No.
I'm sorry that my son is needing an Uber. His baseball got canceled. So I'm like, I'm wanting to be present in that.
How old is he?
He's 15. Well, I keep saying he's 15. He'll be 15 in December.
Okay. Close enough.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about like something also I'm experiencing too is what really strong was when you said I love and accept that version of me, and like I could really feel that and believe that. And one thing that's interesting about the process that I've been going through is that I've been in a 7-year relationship, and basically I was in a sex and love addicts program. I hit bottom and like basically went through this whole thing before this situation. But I was so checked out of my life, and there are a lot of consequences to a lot of people in my life, friendships, romantic relationships, my family. And I was just really oblivious because I was just in this very kind of like addictive, checked out state. And then obsessing over men and relationship, that, and not like just beeline for that. And so between that and just like also working all the time, it was like I was obsessed with work and I was obsessed with men, and then everything else was like blinders. And this relationship, it's like one thing that I've really come to terms with, and I've always had a sense of it, but it feels really true, is like he has at some point done to me everything that I've ever done to anyone.
Wow.
In those places, and like learning to actually love a person who's treating you that way, learning to keep saying, can I love this? Can I show up anyway? I've really like been reflecting, like I've just been learning to love that part of me, and to fully accept that part of me that has been so hard for me to fully kind of like live with and integrate. And so that came up when you were talking about who you were, which also feels like part of it, right? There's something about like learning to love all the parts of us that are represented in all the parts of everyone around us.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are no, I guess there are exceptions to the rule. I don't know, maybe not. There seems to be the potential for just goodness and healing and restoration through every kind of suffering that I can imagine. Two examples come to mind, and one of them is the night. Permission to talk about your family history, Bethany?
Broad permission about any of my stuff.
The day before Bethany's dad died, we were there with him. I was married at the time, and Matt held my wife's hand as we were getting ready to say goodbye. He held her hand and he stared into her, and I watched it happen, and it felt unique. And he didn't know her particularly well. I mean, maybe they had met a couple of times, but he held her hand and he stared into her eyes. And I don't want to speak out of turn, but Allie is British. She's from a very, very British. She lived in England when we met, she is British. And they're sort of known for being a little, and stiff upper lip. And Matt Glazer held her hand and stared at her.
He couldn't speak at the time.
He couldn't speak, but he just had her hand and he was staring at her with this, with this warm intensity, if you will. We got in the car and we just drove along, and we were just silent because we knew that we had just been part of something that was important in a million ways. And Allie's commentary on it was that is how we all really want to connect. That's how we all really want to connect and communicate. And we don't, for myriad reasons, but that in that moment, because he knew that, when it came down to the end for his mortal coil, that there was a way of being with each other that is rich and deep, and actually probably doesn't even require words. And so I look at something as tragic as a young, beautiful father of 4 becoming sick and passing away. And I say, but man, oh man, on your dad's deathbed, boy, did we learn a lot about life, right? Like there's just a lesson there. And I can't talk about it a whole lot because it'll not be good for me. But one of my best friends lost his 23-year-old son several months ago. And Brant, I'm talking about Brant, and Theo was just a beautiful boy, and got very, very sick and spent a decade fighting for his life. And I think about him all the time. And that kid, in his 10-year fight for his life, just lived as deeply and fully and powerfully as he could, with all of the anger and rage and depression and complication and trauma, just the deepest trauma that a human being can possibly have. He really, again, taught us how to live in that space. And so all of this to say that, and it may sound like a cliche, but we really have the opportunity, I believe we all have the opportunity to experience redemption, but it really does require a willingness to see our suffering from more than just one perspective, which sort of goes back to how we started our conversation of crucifixion.
Yes, that does seem like where we started. And it's like I'm having such a palpable experience of that. Like, I call it like non-duality, like where it's not a binary, where you're like holding how the gravity of that loss and what it is to be human, and the just angst and the fuck you, fuck God. Like, why the fuck does this happen to me?
Yeah.
While also holding at the same time, like the beauty and it's there. It's like I'm learning that I can feel like levels of multiple emotions at one time that I couldn't even imagine could coexist together.
Yeah.
To feel those things. Last November, I lost 4 students in like 4 consecutive weeks, and 2 of the students were first cousins. And I went to the funeral of the first family. She had gone missing and she had committed suicide. And so we'd been looking for her. She was, they found her body. Then so I'm grieving. I'm doing all this with this family. And then we leave the funeral. We do our goodbyes, stay, blah, blah, blah. A week later, the mother of that daughter calls and says that the first cousin who was with us in that grieving process has been in a car accident and died. So then a week after that, I'm in the same church with the same family. This is also, these are people who are in marginalized communities and already are just under so many different stressors and things like that. And it was like holding that then. It was just.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, before I even knew where you were going with your first story, that's what I think about. And I think I feel like this conversation happens, and sometimes it happens from this place of like when someone's going through something hard, we're like, but it's gonna be good. Like good side of you're gonna get your lessons, and we do this thing, and that's not how I hold it. And I am really curious about how we can speak to the experience without that being the message of like that we have to feel so blessed by everything that happens, even though I do. Like my story of losing my dad that was the hardest thing. Like I was his caretaker and bedside, and all the horrors, like the physical horrors that came with all of it. And it was the time in my life, that and getting cancer are the 2 times in my life when I was the most held. Like so much help and support came up underneath me. That they're both beautiful experiences. And that's my lived experience of some of those challenging things. Like, and I think the more times it happens that you're like, you do start to see it from a different perspective and hold the beauty of the experiences and the learnings and the challenge and all of it. Like when you get that other taste of it, maybe it starts to be like a reference point that that's possible. So when you're in it, it's a little more accessible. But I'm just thinking of people listening to this and like.
Yeah. No one is under any obligation to fake happy or look on the bright side. Like, that's it. No one is under any obligation to do anything. I guess the only thing that I would say is that regardless of if you want to see something from more than one perspective, you can always see anything from more than one perspective.
Yeah.
What comes to mind is, I don't know if either of you have seen the documentary Accidental Courtesy. Does that ring a bell? It's the story of a guy named Daryl Davis. So I don't know, 30 something years ago, Daryl Davis was living in the Deep South, and he was a really accomplished piano player who toured with like some of the top boogie woogie and like soul acts in the world, traveled all over the world. Mm-hmm. And he found out that their local Ku Klux Klan chapter, that their van had broken down. So Daryl Davis called the Grand Wizard up and said, hey, I understand that your van broke down and you're not going to be able to have your cross lighting. And the Grand Wizard said to, is it the Grand Wizard or Grand Dragon or whatever those weird guys call themselves, said to Daryl Davis on the phone, he goes, you a colored fella? And Daryl Davis said, well, yes, sir, I am African-American. And he said, you know that we're the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan? And he said, I do. And he said, while I don't support your ideology, you are my fellow Americans, and I support your right to gather. And I have a van, and it's yours to use if you want to use it. And the Grand Wizard said, I'll call you back. And a half hour later, the Grand Wizard called him back and said, well, we'd love to use your van if you don't mind us using it. And he said, nope, it's all yours. You can come pick it up, and drop it off and fill the tank up with gas. And so the Grand Wizard wound up leaving the KKK because he had never had a friend. He had never had a Black friend. And Daryl Davis, for the last 30 years, has been befriending people that are in hate groups. And he does so with the mantra, how can you hate me if you don't know me? And so he has a collection of Klan robes. He's got like 40 of them. People who have left the KKK and given him their robes, and he keeps them at his house in a closet as his collection. And it's like, you do whatever you want to do. You're not under any obligation to do anything.
Yeah.
But Daryl Davis decided, hey, I wonder what would happen if I called up the KKK and said, you can use my van. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
What kind of world do you want to live in, right? Do you want to live in a world where you can say to somebody that hates you, hey, you want to have lunch? Want to use my van? Right? Does the farthest left-leaning person in the world with good reason to be upset about whatever they're upset about, you drive by a guy whose car is broken down and he's got a Make America Great Again sticker on his car, and you pull over and help him out? I don't know. It seems more fun. It seems trickier and more complicated and really beautiful. And so my only point is, I think there's always a third way. No one's under any, look, you're not under any obligation to learn any life lessons from losing your dad.
Uh-huh.
The other piece of my story that I left out, Lauren, was when I was 13 years old, my mom and I watched my father have a massive brainstem stroke in a train station in Boston. It's crazy, right? And I can just look at that and go, that just was horrible. Okay. But I have the opportunity to see it as so many other things. And isn't that coaching, really, when you think about it, right? In some respect, it's really providing alternative perspectives.
Yeah.
That are just available should a person want to search for one that might serve them better. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, that is my question. What are we doing?
Yeah.
And who is God? And and why is God like this game? Like watching this process?
I know. If anybody ever claims to have any answers to any of those questions, you can quote me in telling them that they are full of shit. I don't know. I don't know. I have a million really clever theological answers to give you. I got so many of them that would make you go, huh? And at the end of the day, no one knows. I don't know. But I have an operating system that's sort of like keeps me going. what do you want? I mean, what do you, and this is like, not to keep doing like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman when he says, what's your name? And she says, what do you want it to be? But it's like, what do you want God to be?
I'm thinking about Octavia Butler. She's deceased, but she's a African-American science fiction writer. And her books, like one of the themes is that we shape God and God shapes us.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Bible in Revelation, the Bible depicts, in this post-apocalyptic piece of literature that is Revelation, we have Jesus, who is symbolized as both a rider on a white horse that has come to conquer sin and death, but he's also a lamb who is worthy to open this scroll because he was slain. And it's like the spectrum between innocent lamb that was slain and mighty warrior who comes on a white horse to destroy death and evil, right? And it's like, okay, what is God? He's somewhere between that lamb and that warrior.
Have you seen Squid Games on Netflix?
No, I have to avoid like dark, violent, crazy shit. Apparently,
well, I normally do too, but I must say that when I was watching that, I was like, is this another spectrum of God? Like, basically, it's like all these wealthy people put together a game, and it's these people who are billions of dollars in debt, and so in debt that they're gonna like their life has no meaning, basically. And they collect them and they play these children's games, and if they lose the games, they just die.
Yeah.
And then like whoever wins the game at the end gets like billions and billions of dollars and gets out of the debt. But like 300 people die. And the last few episodes, especially then the guy who wins, like what happens when he leaves after having that experience and how much it changes his life to be, he was so disconnected and self-serving and all these things, and he shifts. And I don't know. I'm just like, I'm watching that and I'm like, this is a little bit kind of like the game of life. Like, it's like the twisted version of God. Like you come here and you play these children's games, and if you get shot, but you can, you die, but maybe you get to play again in another life. And like, maybe someone's watching and really like enjoying watching you learn how to play the games and avoid death.
Ricky Gervais told this joke. He told Jerry Seinfeld this joke. He goes, a guy dies and goes to heaven, and he's face to face with God, and he tells God a Holocaust joke, and God says, I don't think that's very funny. And the guy goes, well, I guess he had to be there. Right? It's like, so, look,
But I want to know, Jim, who is God to you?
Yeah. I'm trying so hard to just, like the easy thing would be to quote Rob Bell when he was on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, and she said, who is God? And he just looked at her and said, God is love. We'll stick with the traditional definition there. Well, I wrote a prayer. I've been starting my days praying this prayer. And it goes like this. When I'm really on my game, Lauren, I wake up and I transition from my bed to my knees, but my knees have been hurting, so I haven't been doing it for a few weeks. But when I'm really on my game, I get on my knees and I read this. Otherwise, I've been standing. I'm not Catholic, but I've been standing at my kitchen table like a priest with my hands like this lately. And I've been reading this prayer just because that posture has felt right for me. It's just like how I landed on that. I have no idea. But this is the prayer that I've been praying in the mornings. Lover, and this is an answer. I guess this is without knowing it, this is probably the best answer to the question. Lover of my soul, creator of all creation, redeemer and sustainer, keeper of my heart. Thank you for always listening and for meeting me in this place. I ask that you would replenish my faith, increase my capacity for giving and receiving love, deepen my gratitude for every good thing in this amazing life, and may my thoughts, words, and actions be tuned to that which is joyful, good for me, and a blessing to you. So who is God to me? God is the lover of my soul. God looks at Jimmy Trick and just says, I just fucking love you. He just looks at me with all of it, and just goes, I just fucking love the shit out of you. So he's the lover of my soul. Maybe he doesn't cuss like that, but I don't know, whatever. But maybe he does.
I think he does.
Lover of my soul, creator of all creation. This one who mysteriously breathes trees into existence, who just goes, whew, there's a monkey, whew, there's a fish, redeemer and sustainer, the redeemer who makes sense of my dog shit, sustainer, the one who gives me enough hope to keep me going, the keeper of my heart. He's the keeper of my heart. Because for all of the sort of meta ideas and all of the theology and doctrine and dogma and the evangelicals and the atheists and the this and the that, like there's always been these different versions of Christianity, right? We've had since 325 AD, when Christianity becomes the Church of Rome and we get buildings and we become a political force, there's always been the quiet, like St. Francis types that have just loved children and animals and people and cared for them. So there's always been those things. So apart from any doctrine, dogma, there's always been the Christ who has been willing to meet me in the quiet of my bed at night when I'm falling asleep, during seasons when I've been just completely off the rails and making every bad decision that a person could make. There's never been a sense, even for a minute, that God had removed the lampstand that had been placed in my heart when I was 8 years old. Just this sense of always, I love you, I see you, I know, and it's okay, I've got you. I don't want you to suffer, so I'm going to lay some conviction down for you to respond to if you choose to. But even if you don't, I'm still going to love you. And and this version of Christ is so beautifully secretly available to, and I'm like, it's so funny because I feel like I'm preaching Jesus today, and I had absolutely no intention of coming. Like, I had no idea what we were going to talk about today. And I go on podcasts all the time, and none of this stuff ever comes up, but it's so fun that it's coming up. But I just want to say that, like, I don't care if you're an atheist, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you are whatever you want to be, I don't, if you're like a Raelian, those guys up in Canada who are like, part of the UFO religion. This is a version of Jesus that is so secretly and beautifully available to anybody who wants to sneakily, in the quiet of their heart, go, all right, Jesus, you really love me that much? Is there anything here that's happening? And to just, to just say that if one micron of the things of God are true, that people claim are true, then it just doesn't really require anything of us, except to the extent that we're able to just enjoy it. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, I like your God. I noticed that like the more I explore who God is to me, it's almost like I'm getting where I'm like, wait, I don't want to know. Like it can get so complex, and I kind of like this simplicity, and there's just like a goodness and a very personal experience, an inner experience that you point to.
Yeah, totally. And anything beyond that is a big load of horse shit, I think. You know what I mean? It's like there's this thing. There's, look, no one on this Zoom call is a virgin, right? And so like there's this thing that happens when you make love that is just so between you and that person. And no two lovers are the same. There's this intimate exchange that happens. It's really interesting. I've never thought about this before, but there's like almost like the divine, like God being manifested. How might God be making his character known in sex? But I just wonder, this is like, I'm going a little off the rails right now, but it feels good.
This is a very off the rails podcast, Jim.
Yeah, that's good. So there's this, I wonder if we think about how God relates to us as individuals. I wonder how much of that is like what it's like to be with a lover, where it's like, it's just different. It's just so different. Like some of the mechanics might be the same, but it's so like a one-off in any given moment.
Yeah.
We had someone else on the podcast, and he was going into detail about sex with his wife. And he said, that he sees eternity in her eyes, or God or eternity.
See God in her eyes. Yeah.
And I think there is something to that.
Yeah. Just these places where, I think everything is as complicated and as simple as we want it to be. And I just think that there's a place for us to be little kids and play with it. I no longer have an image of an angry God who wants to burn everybody up. It just doesn't,
Speaking of little kids, when you just recalled that memory of you and Allison being there the day before my dad died, I didn't remember that. And there's like a lot. Sometimes I feel like I don't remember.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you would tell me more stuff that you remember about my dad.
Oh. Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Your dad was a little bit like a phantom when I was your youth pastor. So I spent something like,
in general.
I spent two or 3 years, and 2 years anyhow, having dinner every Monday night at Beth's house when she was little. And like Hannah was just a tiny little girl. And I would sit next to her bed as she would fall asleep and play songs for her on the guitar, And so there was like this, the 4 kids and your mom and me, and sometimes Matt was there, but it was always kind of like, probably not, because he was probably working. But what I knew of him was that he was this really handsome guy that was really well liked by the church. And like, I remember one time having a conversation with him about my weight and like anxiety and depression. This is such a weird memory.
Really?
Of your dad. Yeah. And your dad looking at me and saying something like, I don't know, we were standing in the living room at the house in Melrose. And he just said something because your mom had bought me this diet book or whatever. And he's like, my guess is you probably have like some kind of low level anxiety or depression and all. And all you really need to do is around like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon is eat a baked potato.
What?
Something about serotonin. He was like, the potato will do something to your serotonin. And I just was kind of like, I don't know why I never forgot that. It was just the weirdest thing.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like the weirdest, He didn't
say much though, so he really must have believed in the baked potato.
Right. And that's the kind of the thing. I was like, always like, who are these magical this unicorn family? Because I came from a family that, you could literally look the wrong way and you would literally get a backhand across the face hard. And Beth has heard me tell this story 1,000 times, but we were there one night and somebody knocked over a glass of milk, and like literally everybody like ritualistically picked up their plate and their cups. And Joan had a big paper towel, and she like came through like a Zamboni and she like wiped it off. But I don't know. I feel like the most important thing. The most important things that I know about your dad, I know from knowing his children. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, as we were saying goodbye, mm-hmm. And I could make up a bunch of stories, but mm-hmm. I think the measure of a man, and when I say that, whatever, I'm not talking about that I'm not saying that this is not true for women or non-binary people, whatever. I'm exhausted by the level of care that we have to use in that space, but I still use it because humans deserve dignity and respect. But when we use the expression, the measure of a man is really like this legacy, or the measure of a person is their legacy. And if I don't see your dad in all of you, I mean, it is just like creepy. Is that helpful?
See it in Bethany specifically. How do you see him in Bethany?
No, specifically in John.
Yeah, she's asking how you see him in me, but no, John is my dad reincarnate. But
and you? How, you mean kidding me? Like you are your dad in terms of like the world has blown up around you. It's not to say that I haven't seen you sob and sweat and so on and so forth, but holy moly, can stuff be blowing up around you, and you're not fine, but you're composed. Steady. What's that?
Steady.
Strong and wise, and you're like strong and you're quietly wise. In a way that doesn't require anybody to believe any of the bullshit you're preaching. Right? Like you know a lot about a lot of things, and you've never tried to convince me of any of them. But it's available.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, maybe someday you'll tell me to eat a potato.
Maybe. I've tried to convince you to go have recess at dinner.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, so what she's referring to. So our relationship started with me being her camp program director. And she was literally like 8 or 9 years old at Sleepaway summer camp. And, it's like, what, 50 kids maybe?
I have no idea. It's so distorted. I think my memories.
There's like 50 kids, 50 middle schoolers staying at summer camp, And, you'd have the kids in the field playing field games like capture the flag or whatever. And so you'd get a few minutes to get your leaders aside. So you're with it's like me, the full director, and our counselors, while the CITs are off playing games with the kids, and we're having our meeting. And we'd be having a meeting about how we want to structure the next day. And then this little freckle-faced redhead girl would say, well, I think that tonight we should move dinner back an hour so that we can go swimming again. And we're like, well, we can't do that because the whole kitchen staff is. And then all of a sudden we realize it's Bethany. She's a frigging camper. And we're like, what are you doing in here? You're supposed to be in the field playing capture the flag or ultimate frisbee or whatever they're doing out there. Go out there and play your game. And she's like, I want to be in here with you guys. And I really think we should go swimming. And it's like
kind of influence policy.
Yeah, there's like 0% of her that didn't think that she should have been in there. She's like, of course, this is where I'm supposed to be. I know I look 9, but I'm 22 and I run this place. And she kind of did. But
yeah, I do have a story that I've been a little grown up for like a long time, but what you said about my dad in the moment with Allison, with the intense stare, like the warm intensity.
Yeah.
I relate to that a lot. And I think sometimes people I think I've gotten feedback that I don't get it that much anymore actually, but for most of my life I got feedback people felt like I was more intense than they were like.
You've stared deeply into my eyes.
Yeah.
I welcome it.
I know. That's why we're best friends.
No, Lauren's your best friend.
No,
but really like uniquely there, I'm not even sure if you and I have ever been in each other's presence without there at least being a moment where there's a deep,
Yeah, that's like how I like to do it. Like I want to be with people at that level. Like I want to be that connected. I feel
that
like
interesting.
Connected to everyone. That's how I organize myself and my life, and all the things that I do.
Yeah.
My dad was Scorpio rising too. It's very Scorpio energy.
I don't know what that means, but sure.
And I was just telling you, I was gone last week, Jim, visiting somebody, and it's like getting to see a whole person, all the parts, all the good stuff, all the challenging stuff, all the silliness and all the painful, shameful. I just want the whole thing.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
But I've never thought about my dad that way. So it was really beautiful reflection you made, because I think I was kind of a little bit frozen and overwhelmed that week. I don't remember very much about that week, really.
How long has it been?
13 years.
I can't believe it's been 13 years. So that would have been Hannah would have been how old?
Hannah was 16 when he died.
I remember everybody taking turns sort of sitting with him. And at one point in time, she was holding his hand and texting with the other. And it's kind of like when texting was still a little bit new.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen anybody text as fast as she was texting.
Yeah, she's still a fast texter.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that jumps out at me from the end of my dad's life is that there's in those last couple of days, he couldn't speak. He was in a lot of pain. He was heavily medicated. And then at some point his body couldn't really metabolize the pain medicine anymore. So I don't know, but there was a moment where, we had like a hospital bed in the living room of his apartment where I lived with him. And I don't think anyone else was there. Maybe somebody was, I don't remember, but he got very alert, and it seemed like he got scared and he started making a lot of noise, and he saw spirits. He saw some stuff going on in that room that we couldn't see. And I've never seen him like that in my life. And he was trying to communicate to us what he was seeing, and he couldn't. And it was probably one of the earlier times that I had a sense that there's a lot of stuff that we can't see that's going on all the time. And I have a lot more availability and personal experience around all that stuff now. But I remember that really, it scared me a lot.
Wow. That's not surprising and really beautiful and fascinating. And I have, I know what you're referring to when you say that you are, that you have different experience with that now. I don't know, to what extent you're open about that in a public forum. But...
Very open.
Oh, great. So I would say in terms of the medicine work, I'm fascinated by it and terrified by it. And I think it's probably in my future. But I still have I've got I've got,
not yet.
I don't know. I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to it. The more I see the powerful impact that it's having on a lot of people that I love. So
yeah, it's real busy around here these days.
What room are you in?
I'm in the upstairs office, like in the front part of the house, the bedroom. But the back room, that's the meditation room.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah. What are you beautiful souls wanting to accomplish with this project? I love it. It just feels so good.
So we always have like a little bit different answers to this, but it's called the Healing Collective Podcast. And Lauren and I have just been around all these really cool people who have all these different frameworks, modalities, like experiences. And we just got access to all of this cool stuff that has been really transformational for us and like our own healing journeys and our ideas about what consciousness even is and what it is we're doing here and what the purpose of it all is. And so partially we wanted to bring folks on here to talk about all their different individual healing journeys and different offerings of stuff, that people might get turned on by. And the tagline for the podcast is the paradox of healing, because we're also examining like maybe nobody needs to heal anything and maybe we're all perfect as we are.
Yeah.
So it's both. It's like we're all perfect and we could all use a little help. So we just talk about that. And, with you coming on, one, it's just you are a part of my healing journey.
Yeah.
The experience Lauren had earlier, that's been my reliable experience being around you since I was young. But also I know you've had like a totally winding transformational story and path. And I didn't mind which parts of it we really talked about, but felt like you were supposed to be on.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to be here, and that's not gratuitous, but I'm just so grateful for that connection we had at the front end, Lauren. Just so beautiful. And I
was going to say, I think that's part of the reason for the podcast. I think like those moments, like what you're saying about like most of us want that connection that your wife had with Bethany's dad. Like, I think we got a little bit of that, in the beginning. And I think that
Lauren keeps bringing on people that I connect with like that. And I keep bringing on people that Lauren connects with. And it's like, it's just weaving deep connection opportunities. And I think people, even if they're not, even the people listening, I think that they still access it.
Yeah, I guess my feeling around the healing piece of it is, don't we get so caught up in our heads? Don't we get so caught up in our heads with what we think is available to us and what we think is true and what we fight against and what we don't want to be known by, what we're embarrassed of. And wouldn't we all be served to just, I don't know. I actually went through this season when I got divorced, when I left my marriage 6 years ago. And when I left my marriage, I had made a big part of my living as a Christian speaker. And part of the reason that I left, my evangelicalism was withering away for probably 5 or 6 years before Allie and I split. I was real quiet about it. And then when I left Allie, and all of the people that used to book me for things all of a sudden didn't want to book a divorced guy anymore. And a bunch of rumors had flown around the Christian community, stories about my divorce. And I never bothered speaking to them because I know me and I know Allie, and I know that, she and I can still have tea together. I just watched the dog for her for 10 days when she went to England. But during those initial years of leaving my marriage, my heart was so bitter and so shut down. And it's really only recently that I even feel comfortable talking about Jesus, because now I'm not talking about Jesus from a place of doctrine or dogma or subculture. I'm talking about the Christ that is everywhere and available and beautiful and magnificent and for everybody at any time. And it just doesn't have anything to do with church. It doesn't have anything to do with doctrine. It doesn't have anything to do with hell. It doesn't have anything to do with a million other things. For me, it is just the knowledge that I am so held and so loved and so okay and so being restored. And then what? Then the opportunity is made available, like you're doing right now, Lauren, to live these things out. Death, burial, resurrection. What does it mean to live death, burial, resurrection? One of the things that Rob says, Rob asked a group of people, he had invited me out to California a few years ago to participate in a thing that he was doing. And he looked at this audience of 50 or so people that had gathered, and he asked a person, he said, "Where do you buy your tomatoes? Where do you get your tomatoes?" And the person said, "Grocery store." He said, "Perfect. Now imagine if you went to a farmer's market. What do you think that tomato would be like?" "Oh, that'd be a better tomato. That'd be a good tomato." "Cool. Now imagine that you went to the farm and you actually bought the tomato from the farm stand out in front." "Oh, that'd be an even better tomato." What about if, like, when that tomato was perfectly ripe on the vine and you went and you plucked it? We think that, oh, that'd be an amazing tomato. And then finally he ends with, imagine if you grew that tomato yourself from a seed. And his point is that God loves reconciliation. And we can live reconciliation in something as simple as how we get our vegetables. That thing that was far apart has been reconciled. It's been brought back. It's been brought back closer. And if we can live out the goodness of reconciliation as a concept that's important to the divine mystery, how much more can we do that in our self-talk, in the way we interact with others, in the way we hold a person's hand and hold a gaze? For us as coaches, how much more can we enjoy reconciliation in just the space that we hold for our clients? To be on a coaching call with somebody who just wants to be, like you said, Bethany, they want where their whole self, is invited in. Yeah, it's welcome. It's all welcome there.
Yeah.
And in that gentle openness, our agendas and our ideas and our politics and our hangups and our axes to grind, they don't mean shit. Because in that space, there's a fullness, a gentle fullness that is welcome to be fueled and restored and redeemed and cared for and loved and cherished and protected and used for a purpose to bear fruit. Yeah, it's a lot. Sorry.
In my program, a program that I teach, like, well, first of all, the mic drop for me today is God loves reconciliation. And in my program, it's a lot about reunion. And like, I think that we're bridging a collective time like that. I don't know. I'm just having like a lot of things come up around that, but just like my answer to like, why does God watch the game? You know, why does God, you know, what's God get out of it? And it's like separation to reunion, separation to reconciliation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. When you say program, what do you mean by program?
Oh, I facilitate a program called The Conscious Racist. It's a white affinity space for just white-bodied people who want to disrupt like white supremacy culture in themselves. And, and so much of white supremacy culture and patriarchy and capitalism and all these isms are founded in the idea of separation.
Yeah.
And so much of the ways that we heal it is by reunion with ourselves, reunion with each other, reunion with our feelings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Recovery, like recovery groups, one of the best definitions of recovery that I had ever heard is to say that we are recovering the version of us that we believed we were supposed to be originally before the addiction. But it's just another like reconciling, you know, the invitation to reconcile with myself. You know what I mean?
Right. And what I'm learning though, it's like, it's a both and. It's like everyone is us and we are everyone. So it's
I used to have the hardest time figuring out what that was supposed to mean. And there's this guy here in Marblehead. His name is Bill Willis. He's a fascinating guy, commercial real estate guy. And he came to me and he's like, I want you to write a book on this thing that I'm interested in. And I'm like, you want me to write a book about a thing that you're interested in, which I thought was fascinating. And he's like, do you have any idea in terms of genetic DNA, how similar you are to every other human who has ever existed? And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, 99.9% of your DNA is the same as every other human being who has ever lived.
It's trippy.
Now what? Right? Now what? And in terms of like white supremacy, isn't it a little bit funny that like, come on, are there really any white people? Like Bethany Glazer, you're like glow in the dark white, right? But like when you think about what, you know, the fact that that you and I are 99.9% the same, and then just the history of humankind, how many people have made sweet, sweet love in a cave, you know? And like, here we are. What is this thing that we're all freaking out about? You know, I'm better than you or different from you or whatever. We really are one. Like we're scientifically kind of one. But you guys already know that, so you're not probably that blown away by it.
There's also just I think it just points to like the power of fear and survival. But, you know, it's like if we zoom out, you know, and we look at it from like out here, it's like this journey of like evolving to become who we are and all that created in us as we evolved and we survived and we learned. then the ways we separated as we evolved, then it's almost like a circle. Like we're all just going to end up back where we started.
I'll
The
take
caveman
that.
and the gorilla and the indigenous, and like going round and round.
We're going to be running around in loincloths playing a didgeridoo on a stump.
I feel like when we were talking about like hard things and then kind of like transcending them, I feel like maybe there's some way where I've like my big challenging things, like even taking care of my dad, I found a way to make that physically hard for myself. Like I was lifting his body and rubbing these creams, and I was like sleeping on the tile floor in the hospital next to him certain nights. And like, there was like there's some kind of thing I have where it physically becomes hard, like even just cancer while I'm pregnant. Like there's these ways where I get pushed to the edge of myself. I imagine for Lauren, it's more emotional. Like when I hear what's happening for her, it feels often there's a different kind of extremism of like the level of pain of how something is. And I was just texting Lauren last night. I've been working so much, and I've done this so many times in my life, where I'm like working myself till I get sick, basically.
Yeah.
Like I got sick, like I got a head cold, and today I tried to nab it with some like a bunch of green juice, and I just like threw up all the green juice. And I'm like, I don't know. When you say like loincloths and drums, part of me is just like, obviously a lot of me yearns for a lot of productivity and working and like creating and, whatever. But some part of me is like, holy shit, what if we didn't have jobs? What if it was, there's something that, I don't know, a lot of the ways that I get myself really entranced and entrapped, I would be free.
You would be like a warrior queen. You would rule over massive regions of continents, and people would try to attack you, and you would like walk. I have this like picture of like a Game of Thrones style massive 1,000-person army. And you would have an army 5 times that size, but you wouldn't even bother bringing them with you. You would literally just walk up to the guy on the big horse, and you'd look at him and you'd go, "Hey." And he'd go, "I am King Abadubi from Abadubi, and I have come to conquer you." And you'd be like, "Really? Whoa." And he'd be like, "What do you mean, whoa?" And you'd be like, "I know. Wow. What's that like?" And he'd be like, "Well, I don't really know. I mean, it's a little intimidating because I know you got a big army." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, do you want to do this big fight?" And he'd be like, "Well," and like before you know it, he'd just be like hanging out.
I'd be like, I think we should go down swimming and push back dinner.
You would say to King Ubadubi and his 1,000-person army, "Let's just go swimming."
Let's go swimming.
All right.
But I want to say that around that, like, I think if you think about evolution, like our brains, our bodies, we all evolve to handle what it is to be alive in different ways. And I think my experience of people who are so in body types in that way, it's like the thing that's hard for me about it is how they're not consciously aware. It's, there's a separation, like their body is sick, their mind cannot fully understand what's making them sick, or they push themselves really harder. Like my sister's a body type, and she would fall and hurt herself all the time and break things. And, it's just so interesting to me. And then where I feel like that my version, it's like almost like over aware of all the reasons and all the things. And I can't fully compartmentalize it or put it away.
Yeah.
It's all just a way that it's God knowing itself through a different way,
Hey, I just want to check in with you, if I may. What's going on inside you right now, Lauren?
From just this conversation?
Yeah.
it's kind of like part of these, I want to say breadcrumbs, like just getting me through this time.
Okay.
And I feel
I'm talking about this actual moment.
Yeah. So I feel relief. I feel some relief, and I feel some trust and just enough breadcrumbs to get to the next few moments. And I mean, I would say I've been in some dark places, and I can see like how strong I've become and how much I've healed. The way that I am moving through this is like there's a contrast. I think the part there's just like a shock factor to all the things that have happened and how quickly they've happened. That I just keep being like, it's like my life, a lot of pieces of my life just got swallowed up, and I don't know where they went. And like, it seems like maybe they're gone. And I'm just like, it's kind of like waking up from a dream, and you're like, did that person really die? Did that really happen? Like, which reality am I in? Like, that's more of, I have some definitely days that are emotionally painful, but right now it's just this shock factor that I'm moving through.
Okay.
What was your hit, Jim? What story did you make up over there that made you ask that?
I felt a shift into your head.
Yeah, that feels true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Feels like Lauren should be at my house right now.
Yeah, my sister's there. What are they doing?
Her sister, they're out being wild, doing whatever. I'm like, I don't go to Salem in October. I'm sorry. I'll see you when you get back.
There's a whole agenda. Like, she sent me the agenda.
I know, it's like a detailed itinerary. It's her sister's birthday today, and she's here with her friends and stuff, and they're going to Salem for
That's
Halloween.
fun. I'm going to the North End tonight for dinner.
Jim, will you come over a week from today?
During the day or at night?
At night.
I think I have tentative plans, but
will you break those?
Yeah, I will.
Yes. It'll be worth it.
Can we get naughty takeout?
Uh-huh. Do whatever you want. Paul Dagg's coming. The crew.
Nice.
All
right. I just put 6 o'clock, Beth, November 5th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation. Chicago, huh? Please don't tell me that you're a vegetarian.
I'm 90% vegetarian.
Oh, except for the 10% where you eat Chicago dogs every day. They're so delicious.
Maybe once a year.
Oh my God. When I go to Chicago, I'll eat 2 or 3 a day.
They're actually not easy to get, like in the right, like if you're not downtown, like downtown, they're very easy to get. But like,
I don't know what a Chicago dog is.
Okay, Chicago dog is often it's a sesame seed hot dog roll, and it's a Vienna beef. It's called a Vienna beef hot dog.
Like Scotty dog style?
Talk about it.
Scotty dog is the closest thing you can get to a Chicago dog. I know, it's right there. Yeah. So, and you have like
tomatoes, onions,
pickles, they're called sport peppers, little celery salt, no ketchup.
I like ketchup on hot dogs.
Stop it.
I will not.
Well, now this is where we can't celebrate diversity anymore. I'm praying for you.
It was so great meeting you.
Yeah.
So great. I wish that, I just know that we'll get more of this and that, just all the things that people say, except that I actually mean them.
Lauren, I think the next time you come for a visit, I'm winking, you're not looking at the screen, but I think maybe Jim might be part of Healing House. That I imagine that could be.
What's Healing House? Is that your meditation room?
That's what they call the house here, the Healing House, the House of Love.
I lived in the House of Love.
Yeah, he lived in the basement apartment when I first moved in. He lived downstairs.
Wow.
I rented it for 9 months and I stayed there about 7 times.
Yeah, it was maybe
I've been looking to see if there's a vegan. There's this place that sells. It's called I Can't Believe It's Not Meat. And I was like, do they have a Chicago hot dog? And they do.
I heard a filthy joke that I won't say on the recording, but I'll tell you.
Why? We like filthy jokes.
I know. When will this episode drop?
Thursday. We're a little behind on.
Do you edit it or you just put it out there?
My friend edits.
Okay.
AA. Although he's taking a full-time job, Lauren. He might, I don't know, we might have to shift it. He says he'll still do it, but I think he's trying to fire clients, but he doesn't know how to do it very good.
Hey, do you want to see a really cool picture?
Uh-huh.
This is probably from the 30s. And it was an album cover for one of my like independently released albums early in my career. But look at this picture of a black baby and a white baby playing in a wagon back when black babies and white babies probably didn't play together very much.
Where'd you get the picture?
It's from an old family photo album.
From your family?
From my family. And this is my mom when she was 18, just after having landed in Japan.
Wow. I didn't know your mom went to Japan.
Yeah, my parents got married, and the next day my dad deployed to Japan. And then like a couple of weeks later, my mom flew on a propeller plane to Hawaii and then was on a boat for days.
What?
To Japan. Yeah. And she had never been out of Massachusetts, New Hampshire before ever in her life. And she was so lonely. And they didn't live on base. They lived with a Japanese family in Kamakura, which is outside Tokyo. You know that big Buddha statue that you always see? They lived near that Buddha. And she was walking to the market one day, and somebody looked at her and said, "I can talk." And she was like so happy. And then she realized the only thing he could say was, "I can talk."
Wow, I never knew any of that. That's crazy.
Oh, you and I still have more. Our best days are ahead of us, Bethany. Are we ending this? Are we honoring this space by ending it casually? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Everybody feels whole and complete, like we can bring it in for a landing.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
Bye, Jen.
Hey everybody, if you've got any feedback for us, we welcome it, or ideas about future guests, email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com. We are at Healing Podcast on Twitter, and we are at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Monda Creative, who edits all of our podcasts, and Two Tall Women Productions, who produce. Thank you.